Today is our first official day of shooting pixel poetry. Kind of had a little bit of a shoot thingy yesterday, but didn't get much because the place we wanted to shoot at was closed. So we're trying to change that today. They should be open. But, lo and behold, it's awful weather out today. It's like rainy and cold and windy. Pretty much all the things you don't want on a shooting day. Fortunately, interior shots. So we don't have to worry about any of that crap. Pixel poetry to me was kind of my small attempt at making a stake in the progression of video games as a creative medium. I was exploring the idea that games can be more than just games. Unfortunately, not everything always turns out the way you want it to. In October 2013, I got the idea for pixel poetry whenever I was reading an article about video games as art. And at this point, I had already heard the whole debate over and over and over again, a lot like other people had. And it was something that wasn't new to me, but it was something that still pervaded me in the weirdest way, because I was thinking to myself, why is this still going on? Why is it still something so misunderstood by so many people? And why is it having this hard of a time becoming a legitimate medium? I'd grown up in the 90s. I'd seen video games become the hugest thing since, Mario and Donkey Kong. And I was a little after the Pac-Man days, but I still consider myself a part of the age when video games were not just getting their footing, but becoming this major cultural phenomenon. And through the console wars and through all the new IP and major companies like Sony getting into the game and everything, and Microsoft as well, it blew my mind that people could not still wrap their minds around this. So after I read that article, I immediately wanted to make a statement, and that ended up being the idea for pixel poetry. Whenever I started filming pixel poetry, it was initially just about the games as art debate, because that had transcended a lot of different things, and it had affected me in the sense that I wanted to see a discussion happening between people instead of just setting an absolute in place and denying anybody who says otherwise. Because I've never really felt that was the way to answer a question. I wanted to have all these different personalities. I wanted to have museum curators and musicians, other filmmakers, anybody who has ever had a hand in art as we know it, to say something about video games as an emerging culture. That was really an important thing to me at first. And throughout the woes of production, I found that was going to be a lot more difficult because people were still on both sides of this issue. So it was really hard finding a proper medium, and what basically had ended up happening was I did only end up with people who were involved in the gaming industry in one way or another. But the beautiful thing about that ended up being was that they were willing to have a discussion about this instead of pointing a finger and saying games are great, some big statement that really wouldn't solve anything. And the best thing about it was that people were willing to stand on both sides of this issue and have that discussion. I would have never really anticipated that happening at first, considering who I was interviewing, but it was something that just surprised me to the greatest end.
I'm gonna try to regroup my head right now.
Not really a glamorous lifestyle, being a filmmaker.
I started an Indiegogo campaign for the film in December of 2013, after I had shot some initial footage just kind of on my own pocket money. And what I had found through that campaign was that people were not interested in just games as art. It was a tire debate, and people wanted to see it put to rest. I mean, I'm pretty sure that it had been put to rest. People were just tired of hearing it. They wanted to see something more. January came after the Indiegogo campaign, and it failed miserably, to put it bluntly. I couldn't really sum it up any more than that. I think we were shooting for about $10,000, which is no large budget for a film, and we only ended up with about $243. So that certainly was a blow to the production, if not a blow to my own self-confidence. I had already been in a bit of a depression from previous things in my life. I certainly had gone through some stuff when I lived in Florida, and that really held through with me through the beginning of this production. I couldn't really feel myself being able to move forward without anything behind this film to help it become a reality. But after that happened, I got in pretty good with a few friends of mine who were out in California, and a few of them, you know, in the industry. And through the grapevine, I ended up getting introduced to Devolver Digital. And at first, you know, they're publishers, so at first, even though they loved the idea of my film, you know, they weren't really in a place to fund something, a project for a film. Which I understood that there's certain things you just can't control, but I saw a light with them and thought that if I could make this film and put it under their name, that I might have some small amounts of success. And that might open some doors for me.
I'm just like, my head's hazy, gone. All my wires are singed right now. All my circuits are blown. So I need a nice toasty bagel and a hysterically large cup of coffee to get back on track today. And yeah.
So I did try very hard to look through every possible source for any kind of funding whatsoever. And eventually I came back and I did kind of just bow down and say, look, I've tried everything, and I wish I had any other way to make this, but I really need some help if I'm gonna make this film. And that's the only way it's gonna get done, unfortunately. So they had taken a little bit of a break there to consider it, and came back and said they were gonna advance me $2,500 to help with the making of the film. And I to this day, I'm forever grateful, because that was something that put this right back into motion after the hiatus I had to take, not being able to fund the film, not being able to do anything but continue shooting footage with my camera, my phone camera, which wasn't going to turn out real great, but
I do have to say it's been a crazy experience already. I mean, we just signed the deal with the distributor about 8 days ago, and all this stuff happening, like, you know, it hits you just out of nowhere, and sometimes you just don't know what to do with it. Like, you're excited, but you're scared. And I mean, I'm still a new filmmaker, obviously, because I only have the one film that I made up on YouTube, and I filmed everything from my phone and my webcam. So it's like, do you even call that an amateur filmmaker? I mean, what constitutes what a filmmaker is? It's a little scary to think about everything that needs to get done. And I got 2.5 weeks to GDC, and that's going to be the bulk of my filming. So I'm flipping out a little bit.
So the 2500 came through, and just in time too, because GDC was coming up. And GDC was something I had planned to go to from the very beginning because of the amount of people that would be there that I could interview for this film. And now I had the chance to be there. So I ended up going in March to GDC, and that 2500 disappeared pretty quickly. If you take into account travel expenses, rentals for camera, everything else, yeah, it disappears pretty fast. But I managed to make it happen. I got out there. What I did eventually find was filming by yourself is not really the easiest thing in the world. Running around with camera equipment and lighting equipment, I think I had like 80 pounds strapped around my shoulders. It was a literal pain in the neck. And running audio, running questions, you know, monitoring video all at the same time. Yeah, it's a lot more difficult than it sounds. I think more than once we got kicked off of the premises. I think once in the Moscone Center and once on the city grounds downtown when I was trying to film interviews. So it was a pretty interesting experience, running between hotels and things like that. That was a very interesting experience, very hectic, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. I had a great time, and I completely learned a lot doing that as well.
I'm at the Grand Canyon, as you can see. I'm standing back from the edge quite a bit though, because in case a lot of you don't know, I'm afraid of heights. So this is pretty terrifying for me, but it's also pretty amazing at the same time. I don't really know what to think. And there's like 50-mile-an-hour winds, so even more reason for me to stand back for the
a little bit too.
For the edge.
Man, that's quite a drop. Whenever I came back from San Francisco, I jumped right back into editing and started getting a lot of the initial footage together. But I had to have one trip left in me, and I had a lot of footage, but I definitely needed more. So I decided to take another trip down to Dallas. I got a couple interviews in Dallas again, and I went down and met with Mike in Austin, and he introduced me to Warren Spector when I was out there, who I also interviewed.
Boy, prediction is kind of a fool's game, and it's lucky for you I'm a fool.
I would have never anticipated what would come out of this. I was ecstatic enough to be interviewing a legend like Spector, and had a great interview with him. And afterwards, we kind of got to talking and told him I was also a game designer and that I had experience. And he started to talk to me about his program at the University of Texas, and told me a little bit about it and said, I think you'd be a great candidate for this. You should totally apply. Which, you know, I was like, wow, you know, Warren Spector's asking me to apply for his program, and, you know, like, he thinks I'm a worthy candidate of this. What ended up happening was after I got back to Wichita, and I did apply for the program. It cost me like $75 to apply for it, which at the time I was very broke, so I was weighing my options going, $75, that's a lot of money, because it was to me. But I with the encouragement of my mother, I did apply for the program, and I ended up getting in. I found out in August that I had gotten into the program, and so I moved to Austin, Texas to take that up. So it was very, very interesting how life has its ways of turning around just so quickly and so unexpectedly. As far as I've come from pixels and polygons, you know, something I shot with my phone on zero budget, and having that just be this experimental process of me learning new things, people hating it and getting used to that, people praising it and getting used to that too, which, you know, I had plenty enough of both, but it was something that put me in the position I needed to be in to make something else. And while I'm well aware of all the difficulties that I went through with pixel poetry, it was better than my last film. And I know my next one is going to be better, or my next game project, or I'm co-authoring a book right now. You know, maybe that'll be good. I don't know, but I know what I can take and learn from my last project. No matter how long it takes, or how much recognition I get, or how little recognition I get, I think the important thing for me is to always remain humble and realize that people aren't going to know that I made pixel poetry for $3,000, you know, which is minuscule for a budget. It's nothing. People aren't going to know these things. People aren't going to know that I forgot to use a preamp whenever I was filming in San Francisco. So that caused all kinds of post-audio nightmares that I can't even describe. But I don't think people need to know it to know that I'm putting my best foot forward in everything I do. And hopefully, at least with pixel poetry, I hope that people see that I was trying to send some kind of message and tell a story about what games can be in the future. And hopefully people enjoy it to some extent.